There's an untold tale of victory that everybody in the world needs to know about what happened in the United Kingdom during the COVID era. Hello, my name's Travis Cook, and this was once the great reopening YouTube channel that got banned in 2021. And for 4.5 years it lay dormant until suddenly YouTube has now decided to reinstate it, and we're very grateful. So if you haven't seen anything from me for a very long time, this is why. And there's a lot that's happened in those 4.5 years. And over the course of the coming weeks and months, I'm going to release lots of videos explaining everything that has happened in our movement, happened in our country with the people here, and also that I've been working on, and how I have influenced the world and the events taking place here, along with many other amazing people. But there's one story that everybody has to know about because it's so inspiring, and it shows us that we can stop their agenda. Just because the enemy says something confidently.
Let me spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID. It's as simple as that.
Have all of these documents and they sound so certain that something's going to happen does not mean it's going to happen. But the only thing that stops it happening is you and me coming together, organizing effectively and channeling our incredible power, because we have the power. Our enemies know we have the power, and the biggest trick they have ever pulled, and they continue to pull to this day, is tricking us into believing that they have the power, and when we give it away, they have the power, right? You following? So there is the best example of this at the height of the COVID activist movement. So a bit of a backstory. Obviously we had the great reopening in 2021. It was kind of successful. It could have been better. There's a lot of lessons learned. 10 days to do a peaceful revolution of the mind isn't enough time, but what an insane period that was. But prior to that, there's already had been protests in London, but they got jumped on because there wasn't so many people and we're breaking these bullshit mandates. But then suddenly, after the Great Reopening calmed down, I was catapulted to the top echelons of the activist movement, and then I was put into Unite for Freedom and started meeting up with all of the other top activist leaders in the country and got involved with the protests in London. They were the biggest protests this country's ever seen, and there was lots of them consistently every single month for months. Massive protests, and you can look through this channel to see the video evidence footage of these huge protests. There's an amazing piece of history has just now been unlocked once again for everybody to educate themselves on what we did. So this was all happening, and we're leading the way and standing up against this incredibly destructive agenda that was looking to destroy our way of life and keep us in lockdown forever until everybody got this very weird and experimental and dangerous jab that I would have got banned for even saying that a few years ago. But now I guess I can talk about all this stuff. Hey YouTube, you're not going to ban me again, right? So the peak that everybody needs to know is what happened when they tried to make no jab, no job a thing. Because they started with the care workers. As everyone I'm sure can remember, the first sector of the population that were targeted was care workers. Suddenly it became a mandate that if you do not have any of these COVID jabs, you can't be a care worker. There wasn't enough of a resistance, and this policy succeeded. And unfortunately it became the way of life. Many care workers submitted, or many got fired, and it was a sad state of affairs if you worked in this sector. But then what happens next is the turning point. Because like I said, there's already a massive activist movement happening. So many people finally pulled their fingers out. But when it got to the NHS, they started the exact same thing. You're going to have a jab to work in the NHS, or we're going to fire you, whatever. But this backfired because instantly after this was announced, there was a massive swelling of resistance all over the country. The leaders of this particular movement was the NHS 100K. You do a search online, you can still find the bare bones of this organisation. There was 100,000, give or take, NHS workers that were prepared to quit, walk out, rather than take the COVID jab just to have their job. This was an incredible precedent, and there was protests in London where all of these NHS workers were throwing down their garments, and it was a wonderful iconic scene. But this coupled with mounting pressure in all different avenues, including a legal case was being formulated. You had a doctor called Steve James who went viral challenging Sajid Javid on Sky News. I watched his Instagram account blow up in real time as he questioned this. And all of this comes together, the protest, the legal action, the NHS 100k, Steve James, and so on, that eventually the government had to back down. They dropped the policy. And it's huge, because what would have happened if the NHS 100k never existed, if there wasn't already an incredible foundation of an activist movement present, with all of the brave warriors standing up, and if everybody in the NHS just said, okay, well, we better roll up our sleeves, you know, get the jab, because Big Daddy government has said so. No, we said no. And we resisted, and we did not comply, and the policy was dropped. But if everybody had said yes, then it would have been a thing. NHS, no jab, no job. Then maybe they will do the police service next, or the fire service, and then suddenly all of the public sector, and then we can just roll it out to all of society. Because this is how our enemies work. It's piece by piece, a little bit of the population over here, a little bit of the population over there, until suddenly everybody's fucked. The same thing's actually happening with digital ID, by the way, but that's another story for another video. We'll keep it to the COVID activist era tale of victory, because we stopped that. And who knows how important it was stopping it here, because of the incredibly important role the UK plays on the world stage. We don't give ourselves enough credit on how other countries actually look up to us, especially in Europe. What happens here has a massive effect all over the world. So we defeated that. And just a very quick little bonus story. I have this in my book, Spirituality Without the Bullshit, because I tell people that we can stop their plans, and I give this example, but I also give a bit of history. Again, most people in this country don't know about what happened in our history. We're not taught this stuff in schools, and once you hear the story, you'll understand why. In the late 1800s, there was the same thing happening, but it happened over decades, and it happened with an activist movement that wasn't working with the internet and cars and technology and phones, and being able to print things online and have them very quickly. No, there was a push again to do the smallpox vaccine, and it started out, it was a voluntary thing, and then the government tried to make it mandatory, and there was a massive resistance all over the country. But you can imagine how slow it must have been to organise all of this, but they did it, and you can look it up. Look up the National Anti-Vaccination League. This was a group that actually got together a bunch of other different groups all over the country that were resisting this, because we didn't want to be forced to take this jab. Even way back then, we're talking over 100 years ago, this country fought back against mandatory vaccinations, and over the course of decades we eventually won, and we got the right to choose to have this vaccine. What would have happened if even way back then, over a century ago, the freedom fighters of the era were like, well, you know, we're just, you know, no jab, no fucking life, right? We're just gonna accept this and roll up our sleeves. No, we fought back. We have an incredible history of fighting back, of freedom, setting precedents of what it means to live in this society. And that's an amazing story that barely anybody knows about. And they were drawing memes, hand-drawing memes, warning about the vaccines all the way back then. Honestly, it's incredible. Hats off to the movement back then, because we essentially experienced that, but in ultra sped up time frame. In like 2 to 3 years, we experienced what went over decades back then. And once again, we were victorious. And this is a story of victory that everybody needs to know, because this is clear evidence that has been hidden from you that we can stop their agenda, that evil does not have complete control. And them being successful in their plans hinges on the decisions we make, the choices we make, the way we act, what we think, what we feel. And that means that when they have agendas in the future, or right now, like digital ID, that we, if we come together effectively, can defeat their agenda. So that's a tale of victory. Tell everybody. Everybody needs to know about what these brave activists did in the COVID era, and what we can do in the future.